In this podcast episode, Joe Rogan hosts Dean Radin, a parapsychologist and consciousness researcher who shares insights from his extensive career exploring psychic phenomena, mind matter interactions, remote viewing, and the intersection of science and mysticism. Their wide ranging conversation delves into Dean's personal background, genetic research on psychic talents, the military's secret remote viewing program, and experimental studies on presentiment and intuition. They also discuss emerging psychedelic-related therapies targeting dementia, the philosophical nature of consciousness, ancient mystical traditions, the future of human potential augmented by genetics and technology, and the cultural resistance to these ideas. Dean Radin began his career as a violinist, transitioning from classical musician to bluegrass fiddle player. He discovered that playing music professionally was akin to being an athlete, requiring stamina and strength, capabilities he lacked due to a genetic mutation known as Gilbert syndrome that hampers recovery from exertion. Despite this, the condition conferred cardiovascular benefits and longevity, highlighting the trade-offs of his biology. Later, Dean shifted focus to intellectual pursuits, earning degrees in electrical engineering and experimental psychology. His diverse path included working in industry and parapsychology, often choosing unconventional directions that challenged mainstream scientific frameworks. A defining moment was Dean's discovery of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, IS, founded by astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who experienced a mystical unity upon returning from the moon. IONS aims to explore inner space, or consciousness, using scientific methods. Dean defines noetic as intuition imbued with certainty, knowing without knowing how you know. He explains the historical dismissal of noetic phenomena by the scientific community, often conflating them with coincidence or memory errors, despite accumulating evidence suggesting genuine anomalous experiences such as telepathy and precognition. This body of research has spanned over 150 years, employing increasingly rigorous experimental controls to isolate true psychic effects from artifacts. Dean began conducting psychic experiments while at Bell Labs, focusing on mind-matter interaction and precognition. His work caught the attention of researchers involved in the U.S. government's Stargate program, a classified remote viewing initiative exploring psychic intelligence applications for military and intelligence purposes. After a leave of absence to join the program at SRI International under Hal Puthoff and Ed May, Dean worked on testing the reality and limits of psychic functioning, studying individual differences among remote viewers. He discovered that natural talent and psychological openness, willingness to experience novel phenomena, were key factors in psychic ability, though no consistent biological markers were identified at the time. Dean was later invited to Princeton University's renowned Engineering Anomalies Research, PR Lab, directing multidisciplinary projects investigating mind-matter interactions. His role was to integrate efforts across siloed academic departments, a near impossible task due to disciplinary boundaries and ingrained academic culture that discourages cross-field collaboration. Despite frustration, he used meta-analysis to synthesize hundreds of studies on telepathy and related phenomena. Applying neural networks, he demonstrated that individual psychic signatures could be distinguished based on subtle effects on random number generators. Though the work was promising, institutional resistance and leadership skepticism curtailed progress. At the University of Edinburgh, Dean helped complete an automated Ganzfeld telepathy testing system that removed experimenter biases and increased repeatability. Continuing at the University of Nevada, he initiated presentiment experiments measuring physiological responses seconds before subjects were exposed to unexpected emotional stimuli. This demonstrated unconscious anticipation of future events, akin to everyday gut feelings that warn of danger. A vivid real-life story involving a hunter's intuition about a faulty bullet underlined the practical importance of presentiment in survival. These studies challenge linear notions of time and causality in consciousness. Remote viewing involves describing unknown targets using psychic perception, facilitated by techniques such as scribbling undecipherable impressions before interpreting them without naming to prevent bias. Highly talented remote viewers like Joe McMonigle display spontaneous, effortless information access. Training average people requires substantial practice to suppress preconceptions and identify authentic impressions. Although mechanistic explanations remain elusive, quantum theories of non-locality provide a plausible framework for understanding how consciousness transcends space and time, enabling telepathy, precognition, and remote viewing. Dean speculates that such abilities may have been more widespread in ancient shamanic cultures but have atrophied due to societal evolution. Dean's large-scale psygene genetic studies involving self-identified psychics revealed complex genetic associations, particularly in non-coding intron sequences responsible for gene regulation. Surprisingly, controls exhibited mutations potentially suppressing psychic sensitivity. Further analysis linked the prevalence of these mutations to regions historically exposed to Christian influence, suggesting that institutional repression, such as the Inquisition's persecution of witches and healers, may have selectively pruned psychic talents from the gene pool. This represents an unintended form of eugenics driven by cultural dogma, enforcing control and discouraging mystical practices labeled as demonic. Bridging psychology, neuroscience, and mysticism, Dean explores the real magic underlying psychic phenomena, distinguishing it from theatrical illusions. He recounts a personal experience demonstrating spoon bending without physical force, which likely involved subtle, momentary changes at the atomic lattice level, facilitated by a powerful psychological state of necessity and intense motivation. This state contrasts with analytical thinking and highlights the role of belief, imagination, and right brain functions in producing unusual effects. The discussion emphasizes how modern experiments capture only a fraction of the broader potential of consciousness-related phenomena documented throughout history and spiritual traditions. Dean highlights promising developments at the intersection of genetics, psychedelics, and neuropharmacology. Drawing from observations including a remarkable psilocybin case restoring speech and mobility in a late-stage dementia patient, his company is developing RNA interference nasal delivery systems to modulate specific serotonin receptors, 5-HT2A, aiming to improve memory and reduce anxiety without hallucinogenic side effects. Preclinical studies in rodents and primates showed dramatic memory improvement and anxiolytic effects. While human clinical trials await regulatory approval, this approach may revolutionize dementia treatment and cognitive enhancement, raising profound ethical questions about human augmentation and its societal impact. The conversation delves into the nature of consciousness, exploring dual-aspect monism, where mind and matter emerge as complementary aspects from a unified underlying reality. Dean draws on Carl Jung's concept of unus mundus and the philosophical foundations of quantum mechanics, highlighting how early physicists embraced idealism and mysticism. He affirms the existence of ancient wisdom embedded in mystical traditions, often distorted or suppressed by religious institutions aiming to monopolize spiritual power. The podcast underscores ongoing cultural hesitance to openly investigate or accept metaphysical phenomena due to fear of misuse, dogmatic control, and psychological risks associated with unregulated powers. Dean describes his interactions with military officials and astronauts, revealing anecdotal evidence of intuitive connections occurring under extreme conditions, such as submarine commanders receiving accurate dream warnings from crew members about crises at home despite deep submersion and radio silence. Such cases demonstrate operational reliability beyond chance, underscoring the practical significance of intuition in life and death situations. The discussion also touches on government disinformation campaigns to obscure psychic research and UFO phenomena, the frustrating paradox of researching classified programs openly while mainstream discourse dismisses the very phenomena they study, and the psychological dilemma faced by insiders who must publicly deny their work. Dean outlines systemic barriers to multidisciplinary research, highlighting entrenched academic silos that hinder the integration of diverse perspectives necessary to understand complex consciousness phenomena. Successful innovations arise from cross-pollination between psychology, philosophy, neuroscience, physics, and engineering, yet institutional incentives reward narrow specialization. He cites the emergence of neuroscience as a successful example of interdisciplinary synthesis catalyzed by strategic funding, while consciousness studies remain nascent. Effective collaboration requires overcoming discipline-based territorialism and fostering open communication among varied scientific communities. The dialogue turns to anomalous archaeological findings, such as elongated skulls with atypical cranial morphology and absence of sagittal sutures, suggesting the historical coexistence of distinct human-like species or beings. Dean speculates on the possibility that ultraterrestrials, advanced life forms predating modern humans, have existed alongside or beneath us, potentially living in unexplored environments such as deep oceans. These ideas challenge simplistic evolutionary linearity and hint at cyclic or parallel trajectories of civilization, reminiscent of shamanic mythologies and ultraterrestrial theories that posit enduring hidden intelligences influencing human history. The episode explores speculative futures, where psychic abilities could be enhanced through genetic engineering or pharmacology, transforming human interaction into an interconnected collective consciousness. Dean emphasizes the necessity of ego regulation and ethical training to prevent abuse of telepathic powers, drawing parallels to yogic traditions that caution against premature pursuit of psychic abilities. The potential emergence of hive minds or collective intelligence raises profound questions about individuality, creativity, and societal organization. Technological parallels include the integration of AI, neural interfaces, and advanced communication, which may either augment or inhibit human cognition depending on how they are employed. The conversation highlights both the opportunities and pitfalls presented by AI technologies. While AI accelerates research and democratizes information access, it can propagate misinformation, hallucinate false data, and encourage intellectual laziness if users over-rely on it without critical thinking. Dean stresses the importance of disciplined education, fostering metacognition and skepticism to navigate this new informational landscape. The discussion touches on human cultural resilience, referencing historical cycles of civilization and technological advancement, and frames the ongoing exploration of consciousness as a frontier requiring humility, open-mindedness, and scientific rigor. Dean shares a remarkable synchronicity involving coincident intentions manifested through yogic yoga nidra practices, where two researchers independently envisioned and physically converged on the same research facility without prior knowledge of each other's plans. This event illustrates the mysterious interplay of intention, consciousness, and reality construction, reinforcing Dean's perspective that real magic is an undiscovered science woven into the fabric of existence. Such experiences motivate his continuing efforts to frame paranormal phenomena within a credible scientific context that respects ancient wisdom and modern technology.